After Effects could do a lot of different things, and I'm going to show you another pretty neat one that you might be able to use as a background. I'm going to go ahead and create a new composition again, and this time I'm going to call it the Fractal background. Actually put Fractal Noise background because this is going to use some keyframes to animate it. First I need a solid, and it doesn't really matter what color it is because it's going to take away the colors just using that square to put the fractal noise on. If you look over here under Effects and Presets, you can type the word fractal, and there's one that generates a still fractal that does have some keyframeable things on it, but that's not the kind of fractal we want. Instead of just adding fractal noise to this and leaving this effect there, you really need to undo, because otherwise later on you can't just delete all of the different effects that we use. I'm going to add fractal noise, and you can see that there are some settings here that give you kind of this random cloudy look. Rub through the 30 seconds, nothing happens. What you have to do is think of these as maybe bacteria or something that need to evolve over time. And in order to do that, we use keyframes. So you can see that right now evolution is just set to 0 times and 0 degrees. One full revolution, 360, turns that into 1x. Let me Control Z undo, and I'm here at the 0 point, and I'm going to keyframe right there. Then I'm going to go to the end, and I'm just going to pick a random number of times. The more you do, the faster it will evolve. And to see those keyframes, remember that the U key on the layer will show you those keyframes. So you can go and jump back and forth between them. Goes from 0 up to 3 revolutions and another 305 degrees. So if we watch that, it's actually having to render this first. So it's not necessarily in real time unless the green line goes way ahead of the red one. But you can see how it is just kind of morphing over time. Now let's take a look at some of the different settings on here. There are a number of different fractals, and you can just try some different ones. And you can see that we've got something interesting going on there. Let's find some other things to keyframe. There are also numbers like contrast. That'll make the whites whiter and the blacks blacker. You can increase the overall brightness or dim it. And you can also change things like the amount of complexity, although that's a little harder to see with most of these. You've also got some evolution options, random seed, the blending mode, lots of stuff to change in here. What I find most interesting is, of course, these different kinds. And then you might need a different contrast for that one to work. There's also a scale here on most of these. Let's see if we can find under the transform the scale. So if we go up, you can see that these little details are further apart. And so you could actually keyframe that. So if I set a keyframe for the scale here, go to the end, and I bring my scale back, you can now watch it moving, seeming to zoom out over time as well. So lots of different things. You can also keyframe where the center is, the offset. So I'm going to also keyframe that, go to the end, and I can move it over or up and down. And now I've got keyframes both for zooming out, and it's moving its position over time as well. Now black and white is not all that interesting, and colorizing isn't all that easy. If we type in colorize, you can actually see several different ones of these, and you can try some of them and see if you like what you see. It does add several things here, so if you don't like it, make sure you Control Z undo. Some of these you can actually like rotate some hues on there. Not so easy. Lightness does work. The amount of saturation doesn't always seem to do anything. So if you don't like that, Control Z undo until you get the black and white back. Let's try gold dip. With gold dip you do actually have a color that you can adjust. So you can go and try that. Try and find something that you like. You can also change the mode. So we've got all sorts of cool things to experiment with, and already we now have something that has really never been seen before. This particular amount of movement, these colors, this evolution. So you can have a pretty interesting background for your object fairly easily. I'm going to show you one more thing that you can do here, and that is called Colorama. This one really adds a ton of color that you can keyframe. Notice that I still had fractal noise here. Let me close that up. And you've got all sorts of things like an input phase, and you've got the amount of phase shift that it does over time. You've got a very interesting color wheel where you can adjust some of the way the individual colors are on there, so we can have more teal if we move that away. No, it doesn't seem to do that. Keyframes, amount of transparency, so a lot of stuff. This is really kind of overkill and would really distract from your object, so you might want to maybe just tone that down, blend it in with the original. You could have stars and this going at the same time, maybe modifying its opacity some from Premiere in order to get what you're really after. But this has actually turned out kind of nice right here, kind of subdued, even though Colorama can be kind of crazy. That's another thing that you can do.